You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello, and welcome to another wonderful episode of Business Wealth Impact. Today we have Jeff Patterson, the founder of Northwest Fighting Arts Portland Tai Chi Academy and the Yielding Warrior, where he emphasizes the transformative power of meditative and martial arts practices, particularly the yielding concept. He's also published 2 books and hundreds of instructional videos, and he's founder of the Yielding Warrior online programs, and he's worked with over 1,000 students. Okay, Jeff, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Okay, let's just get stuck into this. We have all heard lots about meditation, the importance of meditation. I agree with it and how it helps your life, your business, everything. But you have something different to talk about with meditation called the Yielding Warrior. So what is this different type of meditation?
Well, yielding itself I wouldn't label that as a meditation. Yielding is a concept that's used in the meditative arts as well as the martial arts. And it's something that I've been passionate about for years. So with yielding, I've broken down yielding into 3 different categories. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. And physical yielding is the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us seeing who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And now I can respond with less effort. So it allows me to be strategic in my movement. And this is essential for anybody doing any kind of athletics because it's common that you're going to come up against people who are bigger and stronger than you, and no matter what kind of athlete you are. And so, in order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. Now, while it may be a lifetime journey to really master these skills, from day one, by integrating meditation into your life, you start seeing these things more clearly inside yourself. And this is where it becomes very interesting. And now we're moving into what I call mental yielding, because if you start to see things more clearly inside yourself, you also start to see them more clearly in other people. So say you and I are having a conversation and I say something that unsettles you, and I pick up on it right from that first sign of imbalance. It's very easy at this point to adjust the conversation and guide it to a harmonious direction rather than if I'm not paying attention to that, and pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to slap me upside the head. And so learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is extremely powerful. One, we're being more considerate, which is something that we should all do more of anyway. And 2, it allows us to be strategic in our interactions and lead them to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. And this is great for our personal relationships and business and sales and negotiations. There's so many different ways that we can apply this idea. And then lastly, we have what we call emotional yielding. And emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but it's with our own interpersonal conflicts. So you think about when something happens to us, oftentimes we'll respond and we'll go down this path, and we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding and our heightened awareness by integrating these meditative practices into our life, we're often able to step back and be more present, more balanced when these things happen, and make a more educated choice that takes us down a different path. And I've been explaining this idea of yielding now for over 30 years. I've been running my academy. I've had over 26,000 students come through the academy, so I've had a fair amount of practice explaining it. And one of the things things that I've seemed to hear over and over again is people will say, yielding sounds pretty good. In fact, I do that all the time. And while I
Mm,
would agree, I think everybody does some degree of yielding all the time. It's
mhm,
kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, I
mhm,
guarantee you that person would see things about the series of events and the timeline that I know at least I would have no clue of. And the
mm.
meditative arts helps us see things inside of ourselves and inside of other people that I truly believe most people will go through life and never have any clue of. And that's kind of the basic idea of how we can integrate yielding in pretty much anything we do in life.
Mm. It's like peeling back the veil. It's true. The more conscious you are of something, the more conscious you are. And then you go, oh, you know, I actually wasn't that conscious. And now I'm seeing new things. And clearly, all of us aren't seeing the full picture of anything because it's kind of like the Matrix in a way. Like, how, how, how enlightened can we be? So I do agree most people do some yielding because that's give and take. But what you're saying, it's more really the moment to moment balance of harmony that, well, you can see that when people start to get heated up in an argument, there's friction and they're just going at it. Instead of okay, that person, I see that that's upsetting them. So why don't I take a step back and let that happen? And then it's more like dancing rather than just going at it with horns locked. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and having a strategy behind it and learning how to lead these things towards that positive outcome, which
Hmm.
is very powerful in so many different applications.
Hmm. Okay, so would you say this has helped you a lot? Now, 26,000 people, that's like a small town, have been through your martial arts. That's quite impressive. That's a lot. So, how has this helped you in your sales? Do you feel like you practice a yielding non friction? I call it frictionless selling. That's how I call my yielding, is that there should be no friction when you are seeing if somebody wants to work with you.
I use yielding all the time, not only in sales, but in managing employees and dealing with
Mm,
students and trying to make them as productive and as successful as they possibly can be. Being a
mhm,
teacher for over 30 years, one of the biggest struggles I have is trying to get people to realize what they can accomplish. And so
mm.
using yielding in all of those relationships has been extremely powerful.
Okay, so give me an example of that. Like somebody that you're working with and you're using yielding. How have you helped an employee to transform their performance, their life by using yielding? Give us an example of that.
Yeah, so there's many, and there's so many different directions, whether it's with their mindset or their health or their physical performance. But
Mm,
it's kind of like, if we're having a conversation and we're both trying to prove our point to one another and we're
mhm,
just butting heads at every angle. But say, for example, I'm totally wrong on my side and you're right, but you just beat me into submission and show me that you're right. I'm going to leave
mm,
that conversation feeling like, man, yeah, she was right, but man, she was kind of rude and kind of obnoxious. But
right.
with yielding, if you can do that with their mindset and do that with their focus, you can teach
Hmm.
them to look for those angles that maybe they're not quite seeing yet. And we're all
Right.
kind of limited by our perception. And by being able
Hmm.
to expand their vision and their perception
Hmm.
without resistance, they become more
Hmm.
open to it. And that's how it's been
Mm.
able to help in many different directions.
Wow. Okay. Now, what about sales? Sales, have you found that your sales numbers go up when you are less attached and yielding? So, how does that work in sales exactly? That it comes to the point of the sale and they say, well, I don't want to do this because I have no money. And what do you say then?
Well, it's very much the same thing, right? So I could show resistance to that and list all of the reasons why this is important. Do this, do
Hmm.
this, do this.
Hmm.
And then I'm kind of beating them to submission. And even though I may be right, they're going to
Yeah.
be frustrated and they're going to walk away and be like, that's just not for me. But
Uh-huh.
if I can help hold their hand and show them a different light on the other side and show them
Hmm.
something rather than proving that I'm correct, and guide
Right.
them so they can see the vision of how this is going to make this successful for both of us, it
Right.
can help me be a lot more successful in sales. And that's how it's helped me many times over using that
Right.
strategy.
Because they feel like they've made the decision.
Exactly.
Right. Now, what about people on sales calls? Because this is a classic, and I'm saying this on purpose because everybody here that sells everything, the main thing is the price objection, and it's not. It's usually fear. It's just fear of so many things. But don't you feel like gently you can guide them past the objections? Because and I don't handle objections myself. There's nothing to be handled as far as I'm concerned. It's more about leading people through their fears to help them feel empowered whether they work with you or not. I think that's important. How do you do that with the yielding?
Well, it's kind of like with sales, just like I do with a new student coming in here, and anytime somebody new comes to the practice, I have three things
Mhm.
that I really like them to consider in order for
Mm.
them to be successful. And the number
Mhm.
one thing, which is so important, is I get so many people that come in here and they say, I've tried meditation before, but it just didn't work for me. And I can't quiet my
Mm.
mind, or I don't have the time, or
Mhm.
whatever the excuse is.
Right.
And if you don't have a good why, you want to stay healthy and watch your grandkids grow up, or you want to deal with a
Mhm.
stress disorder, or you want to improve
Mm.
your performance on the field. What is
Mhm.
it that's drawing you to this direction? And not only how is that important to you, but how is your life going to change if all of those things happen? What is that going to lead to? How many positive directions is your life going to blossom? And then
Mm.
also, how many negative things are going to happen to you by you not accomplishing that and
Mm.
doing that task? And if they
Yeah.
have that strong motivation, now they
Mhm.
have the fuel to stay consistent in their practice and do a little
Mhm.
bit every day and integrate active practices and reset practices and philosophical practices to really enrich their life and get the benefit of integrating an evolving life practice with the meditative arts. And by doing
Mm.
this is really essential. And then the third thing that I always want people to consider is you really got to have a guide. You got to have somebody pointing you in the right direction, because, I've literally had students that come in here that are trying to be self-taught, that have been training for
Mhm.
15 years, that aren't as far along as some students that I've taught that have been here 6 to 12 months. And so
Mm.
having somebody that can help lead you in the right direction. Now, once they have that mindset and they understand their why and they understand the idea of consistency and the importance of finding a focus and direction and somebody to help point them in the shortest path, now
Mhm.
the the price thing kind of doesn't mean as much because they have more
Mm.
value as to what it has to offer.
Right. They're thinking about more about the value than the price. And
Yes.
that's what you want people to see as value, and then they don't think so much about price. But some people cannot do that. They're so stuck on price and petrified by the idea of spending money at all. I'm sure you've met those people, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So what got you into all this? You have a super successful studio, and now you have the whole mindset program. What was your journey to all of this?
I got introduced to the meditative arts in a bit of a roundabout way, in that when I was a 19-year-old guy, I was very much into Western boxing. I love the thrill of the sport and the challenge. And I used to go to a boxing gym that's just a few blocks down the street here from my academy. And one of the coaches at this gym, who was a very well-known boxer, he'd created national and world champion level fighters. I really wanted to get to spend some time with this guy, but he was busy and he already had a few fighters that he was working with. And so I would always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there and work hard and let him know that if he put his time into me, I wouldn't waste his time. And
Hmm.
so I followed him around for 3 or 4 months. And finally, he started giving me some tips and showing me a few things. And
Mhm.
it was only after maybe 2 or 3 weeks of getting to work with him when he
Mhm.
said something to me that changed my life forever. And that he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Now, at the time, I'm this
Mm.
19-year-old kid thinking, isn't Tai Chi for like old people in the park? How's that going to make me a better fighter? But I started doing the practice and it changed my life in so many ways. And as I already mentioned, I've had thousands of students come through the academy, and I've literally heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced
Mm.
people's lives. And that's what's made me so passionate about writing my last couple books and creating my online
Mm.
programs and everything else that I've been
Mm.
doing.
Amazing. So, people, they do have trouble quieting their mind. We all do. We're living in a society where it's just a mile a minute. Now, there's all different types of meditation. That transcendental meditation was huge for a long time. And you had to be like in their society and you had to get a secret phrase and nobody, you couldn't tell anybody. I never understood why. But I mean, anybody can meditate. What do you suggest for people that do have problems getting into a meditative state? What's that first thing they can do to actually meditate?
Well, the first thing is understanding what meditation is. I hear that people think that they can't quiet their mind, so they can't meditate. And
Mm,
I've been spending the last 36 years of my life studying the meditative arts. I've traveled around the world and trained with some amazing teachers all over the planet, and I've never once met anybody who doesn't get distracted. We all do. We're
mm,
human. That's part of the practice. And so if you're meditating for 20 minutes, whether it's a sitting practice or a movement practice or whatever it is, and you get distracted, say 50 times during that session, you recognize the distraction, you use your posture, your breath, your movement, whatever it is, to help bring you back to focus. And now you just got 50 repetitions of being off centered and coming back to balance. And you
mm,
do that every day, every month, every year. And now you develop this power and this resiliency and this ability to be in a distracted state and find
mm,
focus. And this is something that people miss when they don't have consistency in the practice. And, there's
mm,
so many different paths to follow with meditation, in that I'm not talking about specific styles. I just mean different directions to take the practice. So there's like the athletic side that improves your physical performance. There's the therapeutic
mm,
side to help with your health and longevity. There's the medical side, the philosophical side, and then also the meditative or spiritual side. And
mhm,
when you realize what direction you want to go, then you can start integrating movement practices, still practices, breath work,
mm,
philosophical practices, and create an evolving life practice with the meditative arts, which is what it's intended for.
mm. Would you consider walking a meditative art?
There are walking practices that you can do for meditation.
Mhm,
However, if you're walking down the side of a mountain, or if you are walking somewhere where you've got to pay attention to cars and things that are going on, I
mm,
wouldn't call
mm,
that a walking
mm,
meditation. However, you can be present in those scenarios and
mm.
work on some of your mindfulness training, which will help you with your meditation practice.
Because Joe Dispenza has some walking meditations now.
They've been doing
Right.
walking meditation for hundreds of years. Yes, that's
Yeah, I know, but he introduced it, yeah.
yeah.
But it starts off not walking, and I thought, "Well, I really just wanna start the walking now." So I did it starting walking, and I thought, "I guess this might still work." And I think that's also a part of it, is that I think people are afraid of not doing it perfectly, and I'm not. Like, I'm like, "Okay, it's supposed to be not walking now, but I'll just start it walking. I'm sure it's still gonna work." I think it did. So I think that is the other thing, is people wanna make it so perfect. And you're correct, there's spiritual meditation, there's religious meditation, from all the religions have also religious meditations, spiritual, whatever you wanna call it. Okay, well, that's been very interesting. So, basically, the thing to do is just do it now, right? Just do some. Even if people sit down, or they don't have to sit down, but if they do wanna sit down, I think the other thing is, I think people think they have to be sitting in a dark room cross-legged to be able to set that time aside, and you're saying, "No, you could be walking and you could be meditating," right?
Yes, there's many different styles through movement practices or still
Right.
practices, and the idea is just to make it a lifestyle, to have it be something that
Mm.
you do a little bit every day in both a
Hmm.
ritual form as well as active form, and by
Hmm.
doing that, you'll see endless benefits from the practice. And working with so many people through the years, the ones that make that a habit, they'll find that it's the best thing they ever do for themselves.
100%. Okay. Well, listen, that is great, nice, very doable instruction. So I love that. So, Jeff, I have a question that I ask everybody before we finish the show up. What is one mindset or one philosophy? And you have a lot, I'm sure you have a lot of experience. What's one thing that you'd like to tell our listeners as far as mindset or anything? Like if you just had one message, what would that be?
For anybody out there thinking about starting a meditation practice, or even somebody that has experimented with meditation before and has not made it a lifestyle and really doesn't see the value in it, we already kind of touched on what I want you to think about, and that is really investigate why you want to do it. Understand the idea of consistency so you have that discipline and that integrity and that perseverance, and that feeds over into everything you do in life, and find yourself a guide. And if you do that, you will be very happy that you spent the time in that area.
Great. Okay, well, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing everything that you did. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another wonderful episode. Please subscribe, please comment, please share, and please keep listening to Business Wealth Impact. You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jean Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jean Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.